Ready for a deep dive, listeners? We're about to go way back this time, way back to ancient Babylon.
Oh, yeah, Babylon. Even today, the name still means like luxury and excess.
It does, but we're not here for the glitz and glam.
Right.
We're digging into, well, their money advice.
Yeah, their money advice. And
Yeah.
and it's good stuff, surprisingly practical, really. And it's been working for centuries, literally.
So, like the original Get Your Finances in Order guide, but on like clay tablets.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. We've got excerpts from this classic book, The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason.
Right, right.
But we've also got some real archaeological reports too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It backs up just how financially savvy these Babylonians actually were.
Wow. Okay, so I'm picturing like those epic hanging gardens, right?
Yeah.
With maybe a budgeting spreadsheet tucked away in there somewhere.
Well, they might not have had spreadsheets back then, but they definitely knew a thing or two about financial security.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about the people who invented coins
Oh, wow.
and promissory notes.
Yeah.
Like the actual building blocks of modern finance as we know it.
Makes sense then that their financial wisdom, that it'd still be worth a listen, even thousands of years later.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's meet the OG financial guru himself, Arkad, the richest man in Babylon. But he didn't start out rich, though, right?
No, not at all. He was a scribe, pretty regular guy, actually. He was just, I guess, tired of seeing other people succeed while he was struggling.
Right.
And that's what's so fascinating about his story. I mean, it still resonates so much today,
Yeah, totally.
He saw all these other people with wealth, and instead of, just being resentful or jealous, he wanted to learn how they did it.
Yeah.
And that desire to learn, that was actually his first step to riches.
Okay, so it's like the difference between wishing you had $1 million and actually like figuring out how people become millionaires.
Yeah, exactly. It's a shift in mindset, really. And Arkad, well, he discovered what he called the 7 cures for a lean purse.
Okay.
Basically, timeless, practical steps to building wealth. And what makes them so powerful is that they're not, tricks or schemes. It's about building solid financial habits.
All right, so let's unpack these cures. The first one is start thy purse to fattening.
Yeah.
Is that basically pay yourself first?
You got it. Even way back then, they understood that consistent saving was important.
Okay.
But what's interesting is that they weren't, talking about just hoarding money.
Right.
It was about setting aside a portion of your earnings to build that foundation for future wealth. And that's a principle that's, echoed in modern personal finance advice, even today.
It is.
And it really highlights the importance of prioritizing your financial well-being.
It does. But doesn't saving just a little bit at a time?
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't it just feel like, well, a very little bit?
Right.
Did they have any advice for making that money grow?
They absolutely did. And that's where cure number 3 comes in. Make thy gold multiply.
Okay.
And we're not talking about alchemy here.
Yeah.
The Babylonians, they were early advocates of investing to create passive income streams.
Oh.
And that's a concept that's still totally central to wealth building today.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying that the Babylonians had side hustles?
Well, maybe not side hustles in the way we think of them today, but yeah.
Okay.
They did stuff like trading and real estate and even lending. Which brings us to a really interesting point, actually. Imagine applying this principle today. Make thy gold multiply.
Yeah.
I mean, that could mean investing in index funds or rental properties or even starting a business that generates passive income. It's all about putting your money to work for you. So you're not just relying on that, your primary income source.
Right.
You're making your money work for you while you sleep.
Okay, that's making a lot more sense now. So it's not just saving, it's about being strategic with your savings.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, before you get too excited about making your gold multiply,
Right.
let's talk about cure number 2. Control thy expenditures.
All right.
This is basically the Babylonian version of budgeting.
Okay.
And it really emphasizes that it's important to align your spending with your goals.
So basically, they were telling people to track their expenses and avoid impulse purchases.
Pretty much, yeah.
Did they even have shopping malls back then?
Probably not malls as we know them,
Right.
but they definitely had bustling marketplaces.
I bet.
And I'm sure there were plenty of temptations to spend lavishly.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But the key takeaway here is that controlling your expenditures isn't about, deprivation. It's about making conscious choices about where your money goes and ensuring that your spending is aligned with your values and your long-term financial goals.
Oh, okay. This is starting to sound a lot like, well, like modern personal finance advice,
It is.
which is pretty cool.
And it gets even more relevant when we consider cure number 5. Make of thy dwelling a profitable investment.
Oh, okay.
They were big on owning your own home.
Mm.
And not just for shelter,
Right.
but as a way to actually build wealth.
So they were into real estate back then.
Oh, yeah, even back then.
But wouldn't that have been super expensive,
Mm.
even in ancient times?
Owning a home, yeah, it's always been a significant investment.
Okay.
But the Babylonians, they recognized its long-term value.
Okay.
It provided stability,
Right.
security, and as that cure suggests, an opportunity to build equity.
Hmm.
And it's a principle that still holds true today. Even if the real estate market can, feel a bit daunting at times.
For sure. Okay, so we've covered saving, investing, budgeting, and even real estate.
Right.
What about when things go wrong? Did they have any advice for handling financial setbacks?
They did. And cure number 4 addresses that directly.
Okay.
Guard thy treasures from loss.
Okay.
And it's all about protecting your hard-earned wealth,
Mm-hmm.
protecting it from risky ventures and seeking advice from those who are more experienced.
So basically, like, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Exactly.
Seems like pretty solid advice no matter what time period you're living in.
Absolutely. And this cure highlights the importance of diversification and
Yeah.
risk management and seeking guidance from those who have experienced managing money.
Right.
It's a reminder that building wealth isn't just about, just taking risks.
Uh-huh.
It's about protecting what you've already earned, too.
Right. Okay, this is making me think about all those get-rich-quick schemes you see online these days. Were the Babylonians, were they susceptible to that kind of stuff too?
That's a great question. And it actually leads us to the final cure number 7.
Yeah.
Increase thy ability to earn.
Okay.
And it's all about continuous learning,
Yeah.
developing new skills and always looking for ways to enhance your earning potential.
So they were basically saying, don't just settle for what you're making now. You gotta strive to improve your skills and knowledge so you can earn more.
Exactly. And I think that's a powerful antidote to those get-rich-quick schemes.
Yeah.
It shifts the focus from shortcuts and easy money to investing in yourself, developing your talents, and creating, lasting value.
Right. So it's like the difference between hoping to win the lottery and actually like building a career you love, a career that also pays well. Okay. These 7 cures they're really resonating with me. Did Arcad have any other wisdom to share?
He did. He distilled his financial wisdom even further
Okay.
into what he called the 5 laws of gold. And we'll dive into those after a quick break.
All right. Looking forward to it. All right. I'm ready to hear about these 5 laws of gold. Did Arcad like carve them on a stone tablet or something? Not quite carved in stone, but he did pass them down to his son Nomasir. And these laws, they're like guiding principles
Okay.
for building and preserving wealth. And what's really interesting is how much they actually align with modern financial thinking. It's almost like they, cracked the code centuries ago.
All right, let's hear them. What's the first law?
Okay. The first law is gold cometh gladly.
Gold cometh gladly.
Now, before you picture like gold raining from the sky,
Yeah.
this law is all about the mindset of wealth building.
Oh.
It suggests that the more you save and the more intelligently you invest.
The more opportunities for wealth you'll attract.
So it's not about like sitting around waiting for a windfall or something.
Uh-huh.
It's about like actively creating the conditions for financial success.
Exactly. It's about being proactive, taking those consistent actions to build your wealth rather than relying on luck or chance.
Right. Makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
so what's the second law?
The second law is gold laboreth diligently.
Gold laboreth diligently.
And this one, it emphasizes how important it is to put your money to work for you. through investments that generate income and grow your wealth over time.
Okay, so this is where the multiplying your gold part comes in.
Exactly.
But how did they labor their gold back then? I'm having trouble picturing like little gold coins sweating away at tiny jobs.
Yeah, well, their investment options were definitely a bit different back then.
Right.
But the principle's still the same.
Okay.
They might have invested in things like trade caravans or land or even livestock. Things that had the potential to generate income.
Yeah, yeah.
And today we might think of that as investing in stocks or bonds or real estate or even starting a business that generates, that passive income.
Right. So the idea is to make your money work as hard as you do. I like that.
Exactly.
All right. What's the third law?
Law number 3 is gold clingeth to the protector.
Okay.
And this one's all about, safeguarding your wealth, safeguarding it from those unnecessary risks. And it reminds us to be prudent.
Okay.
To do our research.
Right.
And to actually seek advice from people who have experience managing money.
So don't fall for those shady investment schemes that promise like unrealistic returns.
Exactly. This law it's all about risk management and making informed decisions.
Right.
About where you put your money. It's about protecting what you've earned and avoiding those impulsive decisions that could lead to, financial loss.
It's like building a moat around your financial castle. Okay, I'm ready for law number 4.
Law number 4 is gold fleeth from the inexperienced.
Gold fleeth from the inexperienced.
And this one's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
It cautions against investing in areas where you lack knowledge or expertise.
So basically, like, don't try to play the stock market if you don't even understand how it works.
That's a great example. And this law, it highlights how important education is.
Yeah. Education
and research when it comes to investing. It's about recognizing your limitations and seeking guidance when it's needed.
Yeah. It's like if you're going to build a house, you wouldn't just like start laying bricks without a plan or some knowledge of construction.
Exactly. Investing requires that same level of knowledge and planning. Okay. Are you ready for the final law?
Absolutely. Hit me with law number 5.
Okay. Law number 5 is gold slippeth away from the fantastical schemer. And this one kind of echoes the previous law, and it cautions against chasing those get-rich-quick schemes,
right?
Or falling prey to unrealistic promises of easy wealth.
Yeah. So it's basically saying be wary of anything that sounds too good to be true.
Exactly. This law it's a reminder that building wealth takes time.
Yeah.
It takes effort and discipline. It's about focusing on those proven strategies. And in avoiding those tempting shortcuts that often lead to financial disappointment.
Right. Okay, I am really loving all this Babylonian wisdom. It's amazing how relevant these laws are, even thousands of years later.
It really is. Now let's dive into a specific story from The Richest Man in Babylon.
Okay.
A story that really brings these principles to life. The tale of the gold lender's tales.
Okay.
Featuring Mathon, a wise gold lender.
Okay.
Who shares his insights through these captivating stories.
So we're going from laws to stories now. I love a good story. What kind of wisdom does Mathon have to share?
Well, Mathon's tales, they're full of practical advice, really. Yeah. Not just about lending and borrowing,
right?
But also about understanding human behavior when it comes to money.
Okay.
And one of the most memorable stories is the farmer, the ox, and the ass.
The farmer, the ox, and the ass. Okay, that title definitely has like fable vibes. What's the story about?
Well, it's a short story, but it's powerful. And it illustrates the dangers of comparing yourself to others and focusing on those perceived inequalities instead of focusing on your own potential.
Okay.
And in the story, this farmer complains that his ox works harder than his ass, but receives no greater reward.
Right.
He feels like life is just unfair, and that his hard work is going unnoticed.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that feeling sometimes. So what's the lesson here?
Well, the story highlights the importance of focusing on your own path,
Okay.
and not getting caught up in that envy or resentment. The farmer, by comparing his ox to his ass, he misses the bigger picture. Both of those animals are contributing to the farm's success in their own way.
Yeah.
And similarly in our own lives.
Yeah.
comparing our financial situation to others can lead to those feelings of, inadequacy
Right.
and discouragement. Instead, the story encourages us to focus on our own strengths,
Okay.
our own opportunities,
Yeah.
and our own potential for growth.
It's like that saying, comparison is the thief of joy. Right?
Exactly.
So instead of worrying about what other people have,
Yeah.
we should really just focus on making the most of our own resources
Exactly.
and talents.
And speaking of making the most of your resources, another story that really resonated with me is Dabasir's journey from debtor to camel trader. And this one's like a step-by-step guide, really,
Yeah.
to getting out of debt.
Right.
And rebuilding your financial stability.
Okay, debt is a topic that's, well, it's unfortunately pretty relevant for a lot of people. What can we learn from Debasir's story?
Well, Dabasir's story, it's a powerful example of how even when you're facing those really significant financial challenges, it's still possible to turn things around.
Okay.
And he starts out as a young man,
Yeah.
deeply in debt,
Yeah.
forced to flee Babylon to escape his creditors.
Wow.
And he ends up a slave in Syria,
Oh, wow.
which is, well, that's about as far from financial freedom as you can get.
Yeah. That's a rough start. But he doesn't stay a slave forever, right?
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
And this is where the story gets really inspiring.
Okay.
Dabasir, he just refuses to accept his fate as a slave.
Yeah.
He seizes this opportunity to escape,
Uh-huh.
and he returns to Babylon, determined to regate his life.
Yeah.
and repay his debts.
So he has like this major comeback story. What's his secret?
Well, he seeks guidance from Melander, the
Okay.
wise gold digger. And Mathan, he doesn't just give him a loan.
Right.
He teaches him those timeless financial principles that we've been talking about.
Okay.
And Dabasir, he commits to this plan
Right. Yeah.
of saving 10% of his earnings,
Uh-huh.
living on 70%,
Right.
and using the remaining 20% to systematically pay down his debts.
Wait, that's the exact same 10-70-20 split that some financial experts recommend today.
It is, and it's incredible to think that this approach, articulated thousands of years ago, is still considered a sound strategy for debt management.
Yeah,
It really highlights how timeless those basic financial principles are.
it really does. So Dabasir, he follows this plan, and he eventually becomes a successful camel trader. It's like the ultimate rags to riches story.
It is, and what's really cool is that his story, it's recorded on a series of clay tablets.
Oh, wow.
And they actually read like personal journal entries chronicling his financial progress. It's like having access to an ancient Babylonian version of a financial planner.
I love that we have those actual historical records that back up these stories in The Richest Man in Babylon. It's like having a time machine,
Right.
to see how people managed their money centuries ago.
It really is. And speaking of time machines, let's take a quick detour into the world of archaeology
Right.
and explore some of those remarkable discoveries
Right.
that have brought these ancient financial lessons to light.
Okay, I'm ready for some archaeology. We've been talking about The Richest Man in Babylon as this, this fictional work.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier that there's real historical evidence
Right.
that supports these stories.
That's right. The financial principles that we've been discussing they're deeply rooted in the actual history of Babylon.
Okay. Oh,
As revealed through those archaeological discoveries.
okay.
For example, remember those clay tablets we mentioned earlier?
Uh-huh.
Those weren't just a plot device in Clason's book. They were the real deal.
So they actually found these clay tablets.
Yeah.
With financial records on them.
They did. Archaeologists have unearthed countless clay tablets from ancient Babylon.
Wow.
And they give us a glimpse into their economic lives, their business practices,
Right.
and even their personal financial struggles.
Huh.
And those tablets, combined with the ruins of those grand palaces and temples and commercial centers,
Yeah.
they paint a picture of this society
Yeah.
that was not only prosperous,
Right.
but also financially savvy.
Okay, so let's dive into some of those specific archaeological findings. What evidence do we have that they were really as financially advanced as those stories suggest?
Well, for starters, the Babylonians were pioneers in using money as a medium of exchange.
Okay.
They developed this standardized system of weights and measures for silver and gold, which served as the basis for their currency.
Okay.
And this standardization, it facilitated trade and commerce,
Right.
making transactions more efficient,
Yeah.
and contributing to their economic prosperity.
So they were laying the groundwork for a monetary system.
Right.
Which is pretty essential for any thriving economy.
Exactly. And they didn't stop there.
Okay.
They also developed a system of promissory notes,
Okay.
which functioned as early forms of contracts or IOUs.
Ah.
And these notes allowed for those more complex financial transactions, including lending and borrowing.
Right.
And they helped to establish trust.
Yeah.
And accountability in their business dealings.
Wow, they were really ahead of their time. What other evidence have archaeologists found?
Well, one of the most significant discoveries is the Code of Hammurabi.
Okay.
And this is a collection of laws
Okay.
inscribed on a massive stone stele
Okay.
dating back to around 1750 BC.
Wow.
And this code, it's one of the earliest known examples of written law. And it actually contains provisions related to commerce and contracts, and even financial disputes. And it's evidence of this sophisticated legal framework that governed their economic activity in ancient Babylon.
So it's like they had a rule book for financial dealings, which suggests a level of sophistication that's, well, it's pretty mind-blowing for that time period. What kind of specific laws or regulations are included in this code that relate to finance?
Well, the code, it covers a wide range of financial matters, actually, including debt repayment and interest rates and property rights and inheritance.
Wow.
And it even outlines those penalties for fraudulent business practices.
Oh, wow.
Like using false weights or measures. And it's clear from those laws that the Babylonians, they took their financial matters very, very seriously.
Right.
And they had established those mechanisms for ensuring fairness and accountability in economic transactions.
It's like they understood that a stable and trustworthy financial system was essential for the overall well-being of their society.
Precisely. And the archaeological evidence, it supports that idea. Excavations, they've revealed the remains of banks and financial institutions, suggesting that lending and borrowing and investing were common practices in ancient Babylon.
Wow.
They even had a concept of interest rates.
Oh, wow.
Which were regulated to prevent exploitation.
Okay.
And to ensure a fair return for lenders.
It's fascinating to think that they had a fully functioning financial ecosystem.
Yeah.
Complete with banks and regulations and even interest rates.
It really is.
And the discoveries don't stop there, do they?
No, they don't. Archaeologists have also found evidence of long-distance trade networks.
Okay.
Indicating that Babylonian merchants were engaged in international commerce.
Right.
Exchanging goods and services with civilizations across the ancient world.
So their economy wasn't just local.
Right.
They were connected to this global marketplace.
Exactly. The Babylonians, they were skilled negotiators and traders.
Yeah.
And their economic influence extended far beyond their city's borders. They understood the principles of supply and demand.
Oh, okay.
And they developed those sophisticated systems for managing risk and maximizing their profits.
Okay, so we've established that the Babylonians were these financial trailblazers.
Yeah.
But what about their personal financial practices? Do we have any evidence that individuals they actually followed those principles?
Yeah.
You know, like paying themselves first,
Right.
Controlling their expenditures, investing wisely.
Well, we don't have, personal diaries or bank statements from individual Babylonians.
Right.
The archaeological evidence does suggest that they understood that saving and investing for the future were important.
Okay, what kind of evidence are we talking about?
For example, excavations have revealed those elaborate tombs and burial chambers filled with valuable possessions. And this indicates that wealthy Babylonians, They were concerned with preserving their wealth even beyond death.
Mm.
And it suggests this belief in long-term financial planning.
Okay.
And a desire to pass on their prosperity to future generations.
So even in death, they were thinking about their financial legacy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about, just hoarding their wealth.
Right.
The Babylonians, they also invested in those public works projects like temples and canals and city walls.
Hmm.
And these investments, while costly,
Yeah.
they contributed to the city's overall prosperity.
Right.
And enhanced the quality of life for its citizens.
It's like they understood that investing in infrastructure
Yeah.
and public goods
Right.
could benefit everyone in the long run.
Precisely. They had this sense of civic responsibility and a belief in the power of collective action to create this thriving society.
Right.
And this, in a way, it ties back to that story of the walls of Babylon.
Oh, right. You mentioned that earlier. What's so special about the walls?
Well, the walls, they weren't just a physical barrier, they were a symbol of that collective effort
Mm.
and financial resources that went into protecting the city and its inhabitants.
Okay.
And the story, it highlights how important it is to safeguard, what you've built,
Yeah.
both physically and financially.
So it's like a metaphor for building a strong financial foundation
Exactly.
that can withstand those challenges.
Yeah. Just as the Babylonians invested in the physical security of their city,
Right.
we need to invest in the financial security of our own lives.
Okay.
And this could mean building an emergency fund or having adequate insurance or diversifying our investments
Right.
to protect against those potential losses.
Yeah. It's like building this financial fortress
Right.
to protect ourselves from those unexpected storms.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And speaking of facing challenges, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about another powerful story from the Richest Man in Babylon,
Okay.
the camel trader of Babylon.
The camel trader of Babylon.
And this one's all about, taking responsibility for your financial situation.
Right.
And charting a path towards a brighter future.
Yeah.
Even when you've kind of hit rock bottom.
Okay, this sounds intriguing. Who's the camel trader and what challenges does he face?
Well, the camel trader is Dabasir,
Okay.
the same guy that we met earlier,
Right.
who escaped slavery and rebuilt his life.
Okay.
And this story takes place after he's become this successful camel trader, and it focuses on his encounter with a young man named Tarkad, who's really struggling financially.
So it's like a mentorship story.
Yeah.
Does Dabasir, does he share his financial wisdom
Yeah.
with Tarkad?
He does. And it's a fascinating exchange, actually, because Tarkad, despite being in a tough spot, he's initially kind of resistant
Okay.
to Dabasir's advice.
Mm-hmm.
He's frustrated and he feels like he's working hard, but he's not getting ahead.
Right.
And he's kind of tempted to just give up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling. What does Dabasir do to help him?
Well, Dabasir, he shares his own story,
Okay.
emphasizing how important it is to persevere
Uh-huh.
and to work hard
Right.
and to have a positive attitude.
Yeah.
And he reminds Tarkad that success, it doesn't just happen overnight. It requires that consistent effort
Yeah.
and a willingness to overcome those obstacles.
So it's about having that grit factor, that determination to keep going even when things get tough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Dabasir, he also emphasizes how important it is to have a clear goal.
Okay.
Something to strive for that motivates you to keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
And he tells Tarkad, he says, "Fix in thine mind a picture of thine desires, and behold, it will gradually come into being."
I love that. It's like the power of visualization.
Yeah.
Having that clear vision of your financial goals and using that vision to guide your actions.
Exactly. And this ties back to those Babylonian principles that we've been discussing.
It does.
It's about setting those goals,
Yeah.
creating a plan,
Right.
and then taking that consistent action to actually
Yeah.
achieve those goals.
Yeah.
Even when you're faced with those setbacks or challenges.
So to bust your story, it's really about the transformative power
Yeah.
of having a clear vision
Right.
and working hard
Yeah.
and never giving up on your dreams.
Yeah.
Even when you're starting from that place of disadvantage.
Absolutely. It's a story that's full of hope
Yeah.
and resilience
Right.
and practical wisdom.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that financial success, it isn't just about, about luck or circumstance.
Uh-huh.
It's about taking ownership of your situation.
Yeah.
And making those choices that align with your goals.
Okay. We've covered a lot of ground in this Babylonian financial adventure.
Yes.
We've explored those 7 cures, the 5 laws,
Yeah.
the gold lenders' tales, and we even delved into the archaeological evidence that confirms their financial prowess.
We did.
But there's one more story you mentioned earlier.
Right.
The luckiest man in Babylon.
Yeah. And this tale, it offers a unique perspective
Okay.
on the role of luck in financial success. Challenging our preconceived notions about what it truly means to be fortunate.
I'm intrigued. We'll dive into that story and explore its insights in part 3 of this deep dive.
Yeah.
All right, so we've traveled all the way back to ancient Babylon.
Yeah.
Learned about their surprisingly modern money advice.
Right.
And we've even seen those real-life financial records.
Yep.
But we have one last stop on this Babylonian financial tour.
Okay.
The luckiest man in Babylon.
Ah, yes. This story takes a fascinating turn. We meet this guy, Sharunada,
Okay.
and he seems to have it all, successful merchant,
Right.
respected in the community, the picture of prosperity.
Okay.
But he's wrestling with this personal dilemma that leads him to question like the very nature of luck.
A dilemma. So it's not all like sunshine and chariots for Sharunada. What's going on?
Well, he feels this sense of obligation
Okay.
to the grandson of his former business partner,
Yeah.
this young man named Hadan Gula.
All right.
And Sharunada, he wants to help Hadan succeed.
Yeah.
But there's a problem.
Okay.
Hadan, he believes that wealth should just, fall into his lap.
Right.
He's got that entitled heir attitude.
Oh, yeah. I've met a few Hadans in my time.
Right.
It's tough to break through that sense of entitlement.
It is.
So how does he try to teach him about real wealth?
Well, instead of, just lecturing him, Sharunada takes Hadan on this journey, a kind of financial mentorship road trip, if you will.
Oh, right.
And he starts by sharing his own humble beginnings.
Okay.
He was a slave captured in war
Wow.
and forced to work on the very walls of Babylon.
Whoa. He really started from the bottom.
He did.
I guess that's one way to show Hadan that success isn't just handed to you.
Right.
Did Hadan have like one of those aha moments?
Not at first.
Uh-huh.
Hadan, he initially scoffed at the story.
Right.
Saw it as irrelevant to his own, life of privilege. But Sharunada, he's a patient teacher.
Okay.
And he skillfully weaves in these stories about Hadan's grandfather,
Okay.
Arad Gula,
Right.
emphasizing, how his hard work
Yeah.
and his determination
Yeah.
were the keys to his success.
So he's trying to connect Hadan to
Yeah.
his family legacy,
Right.
hoping to spark some inspiration.
Exactly.
Got it.
Well, it was a gradual process.
Okay.
But Sharunada, he eventually breaks through Hadan's cynicism, and he shares this story about his time as a slave
Okay.
working in a bakery, and he describes how this simple act of kindness from Hadan's grandfather, who was then a rug merchant.
Yeah.
It gave him hope and fueled his desire to work hard and earn his freedom.
It's amazing how a small act of generosity can have such a ripple effect.
Yeah,
It sounds like this story was the turning point for Hadan.
it was.
Yeah.
Hadan, he finally starts to understand that his grandfather's success wasn't just about luck
Right.
or inheritance,
Right.
but about character,
Yeah.
hard work,
Uh-huh.
and making the most of opportunities.
Right.
It's like the Babylonian version of pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah.
But with this focus on mentorship
Okay.
and the importance of role models.
All right. So what's the ultimate takeaway from the luckiest man in Babylon? What is Shurvanada? What does he hope to teach Hadan
Right.
and us about true luck?
Well, this story, it kind of turns the idea of luck on its head.
Okay.
It suggests that true luck, it's not about random chance.
Right.
It's about being prepared
Yeah.
to seize those opportunities when they arise. It's about having those skills and the knowledge and the work ethic to turn those opportunities into success.
So it's like the saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Exactly. Shurvanada, he shows Hadan that work isn't something to be avoided.
Right.
You know, it's a path to building character, to attracting those opportunities, and to creating this life of meaning and accomplishment.
I love that message.
Yeah.
It's empowering.
Indeed.
It's actionable,
Uh-huh.
and it really aligns with all those Babylonian principles that we've been exploring throughout this entire deep dive.
It really does.
Is it?
We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we have.
From the 7 cures for a lean purse to the 5 laws of gold.
Okay.
From the gold lenders' tales to the archaeological evidence that confirms their financial wisdom.
Right.
But I think it all boils down to this: the principles of sound financial management are timeless and universal.
It's amazing how relevant these ancient lessons are to our lives today.
Yeah.
Even though, we're dealing with credit scores and 401ks instead of clay tablets and camel caravans.
Absolutely. And while these specific strategies may need to be adapted,
Right.
the underlying principles, they remain the same.
Yeah.
The Babylonians, they understood that true wealth, it's not just about accumulating money.
Right.
It's about building this life of financial security and freedom and purpose.
So if a civilization that thrived thousands of years ago could master the art of financial well-being, what's stopping us from doing the same?
That's the question we should all be asking ourselves. The Babylonians, they've given us a blueprint.
Yeah.
It's up to us to take those principles and build our own financial empires.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inspired.
You too.
I'm ready to revisit my budget, explore some new investment options,
Right.
and maybe even try my hand at camel trading. Just kidding. But seriously, these ancient stories, they've given me a fresh perspective on money and a renewed sense of motivation to achieve my financial goals.
And that's the beauty of these timeless tales, really.
Yeah.
They remind us that financial wisdom, it's not just about numbers.
Right.
It's about the stories we tell ourselves about money, the values we prioritize, and the choices we make every day.
Well said.
Yeah.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder this final thought.
Okay.
If the Babylonians could crack the code to financial well-being 5,000 years ago,
Right.
what's stopping you from doing the same today?
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.